Look at that thing. Yeah, we can keep it there. We're looking for clues with Dr. Alexis Sams, joining us from Arizona. Just put out food clues, decoding the hidden messages behind your food, likes and dislikes. And she did not choose this music, but I looked for the word clues, and Robert Palmer came up. That's the expanded edition on Spotify. All right. Don't get sued, YouTube. Don't get sued. Dr. Alexis Sams, for the introduction here, everyone should know we were classmates in class of 2008 LIU physical therapy program back in Brooklyn. Now I am in Colorado. You are in Arizona. How is the dry weather in Arizona right now today?
It's fabulous. Like, you won't get me out of here for a minute. We're in upper 80s, low 90s right now, but just got over our like rain season, which is really like 3 weeks, and that's it. And yeah, it's beautiful. I took a walk this morning, no jackets. No, it was great. So loving it.
Awesome. We had some snow last weekend, whatever.
Yeah, no.
All good. And we're like 2 states away, I think. So it's crazy.
It is.
So talk to us about, and where in Arizona are you for the folks?
I'm in Phoenix.
Perfect. And do you prefer people work with you in person or online? What percentage of your business is online versus in person?
I'm about 70% online and 30 virtual. 30 in clinic. And that's been a blessing because it just allows me to help more people in a bigger span. So yeah, but whatever the client likes, if they're nearby, they can totally drop in.
Okay. Same pricing?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's the same. Same brain.
Perfect. Same brain. Same time. Awesome. So yeah, again, we went to school, got our doctorates in physical therapy, spent, 6 figures at least, probably. We don't have to go into too many specifics, but now you are pretty much 100% shifted away from traditional physical therapy, let's say. Is that correct?
Yeah. Which it's a surprise to me. Every once in a while I'll come across somebody with like a musculoskeletal knee, because I went into more like an orthopedic specialty when I started out, but I am largely like functional medicine based, holistic healthcare. That's 99.5% of my clients now, which it's fabulous. I love it.
What's the other 0.5%?
The other 0.5% is like your
orthopedic, somebody
stuff. Yeah, that doesn't have a huge functional medicine like undercurrent issue driving it. Like purely, I sprained my ankle and I knew you, or somebody knows you type thing.
Gotcha. Love it. And yeah, we were just talking we started with 20 people in our class. I think one person did not make it, so we graduated 19, and trying to keep up with those folks. Class of 2008 there. A lot of people went off into their specialties. We had a pediatric special, Anna. I had her on here. We have a few classmates doing women's health. We have a few people just popping out 30 kids, whatever. But so you ended up going this circuitous route, or I don't know if it's very circuitous. I mean, but tell us the story of how you ended up shifting away. And you were focusing a lot on dance medicine. Is that like the main thing?
Oh yeah, So like, yeah.
I know, but the people don't know. We need the people to know.
When I started, I was super determined to build a career in dance medicine. So that's actually how I started. Largely outpatient, orthopedic based, but with a focus and a specialty in dance medicine. And that was going good for a while. My first clinic and my first business was 100% focused on dance medicine, injury prevention, courses for dance educators and stuff like that. The switch came with the pandemic. So I always had a functional medicine background to help dancers who didn't respond to the musculoskeletal approach. But then with the pandemic, it just shifted more and more into the functional medicine specialty. So the same parents of those dancers were then calling me for like immune support programs and didn't want to get sick. And, oh, by the way, I also have, high cholesterol. And so things just took a very strong pivot. And so far they stayed that way. And in terms of food clues, as I was working with people, I just started noticing, or actually, yeah, clients started telling me at the end of their treatment program for other stuff. They were like, oh, by the way, like my food allergy went away. Like my client Rhonda, she was like, I can eat cantaloupe and avocado now, and I can do this and I can do that, and I can go somewhere and there is, you know, noodles on my plate and I had a couple bites and I didn't know it and I didn't blow up because of the gluten. So I started noticing that more and more people were talking about that. And recently I just shifted to just speaking more about that specifically, the fact that how I treat and the framework that I use with my clients specifically helps to overcome food allergies and intolerances. And then I had the idea at a business retreat to write food clues. That's a fun story too. So
We'd love to hear. I mean, and I'll just say real quick,
like,
it's a beautiful book. You know, when I purchased it to support my old classmate here and said, let's get you on the podcast. But I was pretty surprised. I was expecting, you know, like I've seen people kind of self-publish and things like that. And are you with a publisher?
no,
Or
self-published.
you self-publish? But yeah, I've seen a lot of these kind of books where people self-publish, and it's just like, you know, and this is my story, and again, there's nothing wrong with that, but yeah, I mean, I was blown away by how pretty the book is. It's just very, very colorful, and
It's
makes me
very
hungry.
colorful.
Makes me hungry.
I was super excited about that part. I knew I wanted it to be more like a guide, but not like a dry encyclopedia and not like a dry narrative book. I wanted people to be able to like flip to the food that they wanted to know about and easily like get some easy information. So you get the book and you're like, I know I'm allergic to peanuts. It's in alphabetical order. You flip to peanuts. Like, I know I'm allergic to melons. You flip to melons. I personally loved that part about the book. In terms of giving people information and starting them on the journey of answering questions. The more and more I talk to people who have food allergies and intolerances, the more I kind of hear the trend that some are led to believe that like it's kind of just that, you know, that's what it is, that's what you have, there's nothing you can do about it, you just got to avoid the food. And I'm finding more and more that that's not the case. So this was my message to the world, I guess, as it were, to let them know that that's not always particularly true. There are reasons and things driving the allergies, and this is just a foundation, a launch pad for telling people what those issues can be and how they can start fixing them. So I'm really excited to get that information out.
Yeah, and again, I've been trying to do. Go ahead.
No, I was you asked about the story, how it came about.
Go for it.
I was at a business retreat with my girlfriend, and we were at a resort. And it's really unique because when we sat down to eat, and the first thing that the waiter said, which doesn't always happen at restaurants, but it definitely happens a lot of times at resorts when people travel. The first thing that he asked was, are there any food allergies? Like, does anybody have any food allergies at the table to be aware of? And my girlfriend just went right into, she's allergic to carrots and all the details about how her food needs to be prepared. And she was like, after that waiter left, she was like, I could see your gears were turning. Like, what are you thinking? And I was just telling her, like, based on how she was describing the allergy and how she had to have the food prepared, I could kind of get a sense of what was probably driving it in terms of what was going on in her body to cause her to react to the food. And she was like, and you know all that just by how I was describing it? And I was like, yeah. And we kind of, you know, danced around that a little bit. And then by the end of the retreat, I was on the plane on the way home, and I was like, that's what people need to know. They need to know, like, what's a little detail about the food that causes, you know, the reaction. And so by the time the plane landed, I had already sketched out notes for like the 35 foods that are in the book. And that's where Food Clues was born. I don't know how I came up with the name Food Clues, but I like it. I love it. It kind of rhymes.
Is it off of Blue's Clues, maybe?
I don't know.
Not to start a lawsuit or anything.
No, not at all. But I think it was just like when I talk to people about it, I always say like the food is more like the clue that lets me know what's going on and what needs to be treated and how I need to help you. And I guess over time, the more and more I said that, I was just like, oh, food clues. That works. Makes sense. So that's the story.
Just to give people an example of the book, right, is like I have this is the 30th food soy, right? So like I've had intolerance to soy, and we could talk a little more about what intolerance means versus allergy and those kind of words. But I know that one of my examples is I had a pad thai and I was like, ooh, bean curd. That sounds interesting. I like beans. I like the taste of beans. So I ordered pad thai with bean curd, and it did not end well that night, let's just say. And I was in Manhattan, New York City, and had to find a bathroom very quickly. So without getting too
Which
graphic,
you can't do in Manhattan.
Yeah, I think I actually took a cab all the way back to Brooklyn, which didn't necessarily help. But anyway, whatever. That story is not the important part. But the point is, I've had that consistency where even if I, when soy milk was becoming a thing, I'd get a protein shake at my, college campus or whatever, and I'm like, hey, yeah, put some soy milk in there. Let me try the soy milk. I would feel like stuff down my throat, like it's not closing up. It's not a true reaction, but I feel like that doesn't happen with other foods. So I was very well aware that soy, for whatever reason in my body, had problems. So again, I can go to that page 30, and we have the different categories, common avoidance responses, which I don't necessarily fit into all of those. There's no running to the bathroom response. But food clue category, poor protein digestion, that would be interesting to explore. Allergy stats, some and where are you getting these stats from? NIH, things like that.
National Institute of Health.
Yep. And then food clue explained, additional information, health concerns. So yeah, anyone who has those kind of known allergies or intolerances or things that they're like, yeah. And then the other part that when I work with people on their nutrition or their overall health, their holistic piece of that, I'm saying like, yeah, most people realize that when they have spicy Mexican food or Indian food, they don't have a great time in the toilet the next couple, 24 hours or whatever. And it's like, we don't always put those pieces together. And then how do we also extrapolate which of those ingredients was the issue? Was it the spice? Was it something else? People just like, yeah. And then they might not eat Indian food. They might do it once every few months. And like, hey, I'm in the mood for Indian food. And like, they forget that it's an unpleasant experience. The food might be tasty. It might be a fun environment. It might be something different, but understanding how that all impacts our health and being more aware of that. So I'm thrilled that, again, you're sharing that. My question becomes a couple things, in fact, is A, what's wrong with our medical system? And I know that's a huge topic, but why are people so disconnected, and why do people trust their doctors when the truth is most medical doctors who your PCP, your GP, your general practitioner, your primary care physician might be the person you're having these conversations with. They probably have less than 15 hours in their entire training on nutrition and what that means. The advice is still pretty behind the times, behind the evidence, let's say. And the other question of that is, what do we think of allergy testing? Again, I have my strong opinions on that, but I'm going to let you, as the guest and the expert here, talk about allergy testing and what that usually entails.
Okay. Thanks. You only gave me 2 questions. So
only 2 in there. Only 2.
I gotta remember this. Okay, so the thing about the medical community and why this isn't talked about. I have multiple kind of perspectives. One is I always believe in best intentions. The medical field, especially like Western medicine, it's a different toolbox. It's a different lens. It's a different perspective. And I tell clients that all the time. Sometimes, and I get sometimes tunnel vision for like my expertise and my perspective. And sometimes I have to take a step back when I'm working with clients. They've got their expertise and their perspective. And from my understanding, a lot of Western medicine is built on symptom management. I think it came from a good place. I think over history, there were times where large groups of people felt bad. And the goal was to just help people feel better. And I think fast forwarding that to present day, I think that's still the large mentality. Like somebody comes into, a patient comes into a doctor's office, they feel really bad. They just want to feel better. And I think, the practice and the mentality is just, I don't know why I just set off fireworks. I don't know how I did that.
It's
it's probably my
signals. Yeah. That's okay. We like anyone listening is missing the party.
We're missing the party. Yeah, I think that there's still that intention to help people feel better quickly. We're in kind of like that instant gratification type, environment still. And I feel like there's still not as much focus on the why do you feel bad in the first place. There's just a little bit more focus in that arena for just feel better. And I don't want to quite say like at any measure, but for lack of a better phrase, almost at any measure. So I think that's more the mentality and what drives the decisions made in Western medicine. I still think that there's also a lot of implied reliance on, you know, the doctor as the expert. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be. What I guess I really want to say about that is I personally balance and try to empower my clients with more like healthcare decision making ability. And I do that through education, just like simple concepts. I let them know that, you know, they ultimately do have the right to make their final decision in their medical care. They can say no to anything. You know, they might not know the reasons why, but they always have the right to ask questions. And I really try to make sure that my clients understand that, because a lot of my clients are still working with a medical doctor. They're still working with some type of physician. So yeah, like I said, I think there's always good intentions. I think that there can just maybe be some shifting and refocusing on what the overall health goals should be, just to help people live better lives. The second question you asked me about was about allergy testing and what I thought about that.
Good memory.
Thank you. Side note, I can send you a link because I actually did a video about this because I get this question a lot. So I will send you that. If you want to put it in the show notes, you totally can, but I will give you like the super, super short version now. I actually have a theory about it, and I call it the FAST theory, the food allergy spectrum theory. FAST. And basically what it is and how it relates to allergy testing is that allergic reactions are based on, I call the 3 T's: tissue, type, and time. Those are the 3 factors that go into allergy testing. Those are also the 3 factors that go into why some people can have like big blown up reactions to food and the same food, and some people can have minimal reactions. And that's like the spectrum in the FAST theory that I kind of believe. So to sum it all up, basically the differences or inconsistencies in a lot of allergy tests within the same person are the differences of those 3 factors: tissue, type, and time. So allergy tests that test 2 different tissues, if the underlying issue has to do with one tissue versus the other, you can get a positive result for one and a negative result for the other, because the underlying issue only affects one of those issues. So one of my clients, actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I was talking to an old friend, and she was considering becoming a client. And we were talking about a lot of different things. And basically, and you could hear kind of like the frustration a little bit, you know, because she wants this was for her daughter who had an allergy. She wants her daughter to feel better. She wants her daughter to live a better life. And she just asked, like flat out, she said, then why is it that every time she gets a blood test, an IgE test, which if you have food allergies, you guys are probably familiar with that term. Why is it that every time she takes an IgE blood test, the test comes back negative? And I simply responded, because the thing that's driving the allergy is not in her blood. So if it's not in her blood, you are going to come up with a negative test all the time. And that's where the example of tissue becomes a factor. If the allergen is responding, or if the underlying issue that's driving the allergen is in another tissue, possibly testing that tissue, you'll probably find a positive result. That's actually the essence of my food clues. Sometimes that can be pulled out in how you respond to certain foods. So in a nutshell, that's my thought about allergy testing. They're not always inaccurate, but you do have to consider those 3 T's and kind of put those puzzle pieces together. So like I said, I'll give you the link where I go into that, because I think it's like a 30-minute video where I break all that down.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm excited to watch that video. And so the way I talk about this when I bring some of these up is, I talk a similar kind of spectrum piece where I call it a pyramid, where at the very top, maybe there's 1% of the population, which I think is growing now. And maybe you have better statistics of the percentage of the population that say, celiac, and actually is dairy intolerant or gluten intolerant, or actually has a true allergy, if we want to call it that. And again, we can get a little more into the definitions there, but at the very top, whatever that is, 1 to 5%, let's say, at the very bottom, there's probably 1 to 5% of people who have no reaction, theoretically. Right. And then somewhere in between, where do you fall on that? We don't, and I don't, it's nearly impossible to tell, in my opinion, when it comes to allergy testing. And again, some people know, like, if I smell gluten, again, I run to the toilet, or soy, or whatever. And so that's kind of the way I talk about it. So it sounds like there's some similarity of that spectrum theory. I like that FAST theory. The other thing I talk about with allergy testing is, I think a lot of times you're going to develop the response. So if I eat a lot of eggs, if I have 3 eggs every morning as just like my normal part of my breakfast, and I have a lot of, it seems like eggs, coconut come up for everybody, right? I don't know if you've seen that on like true on standard allergy testing. Eggs and coconut seem to come up for everyone.
It's on avocado. My intake. Yeah, it's on my intake. So yes, it is very common.
My question is it a true allergy, or is it just something that comes up positively because you're eating a lot of it and now your body's building these antibodies, or whatever we want to call it, enzymes, and therefore the test comes up positive? So what is your take on that?
To answer your direct question, that kind of nuance doesn't matter to me. What matters is that it's a problem. I don't care what you call it. You can call it, whatever you want. But
to be clear, I want to say that. So I'm saying I don't think it's a problem, because I think you're going to develop. If I eat a lot of kiwis and then kiwi comes up, am I actually having a negative response, or is it just coming up because my body needs to be able to digest that, and it's showing up in this test? So you're saying it is a problem because it's coming up. They don't necessarily have symptoms from eating kiwi, eggs, whatever it is. But you're saying because it's coming up in this IgG, IgE, any of that kind of stuff, if it is coming up positive, it factors somewhere into your equation?
Probably, yes. So if you don't necessarily have if you can tolerate the food, if you can eat the food, but it pops up on a test as you having an allergy to it, there's probably, it's what you're seeing is the underlying issue. The test results is the underlying issue. And so where Food Clues kind of sits in there with that is that understanding. So you were talking about, we'll use kiwi, for example. Actually, we can use kiwi and eggs because they kind of have an underlying similar food clue. So say you eat tons of kiwi, you eat tons of eggs, and for whatever reason, you go in and get an allergy test and it comes up positive. You're supposed to be allergic to kiwi and eggs, but you can tolerate them well. One, you might be, or if this was my client, I'm looking for the thing that kiwi and eggs has in common that is probably driving that response. And one of the big things that kiwi and eggs have in common is protein digestion, different types of protein compounds in your body's ability to be able to break those down. So that's one thing. 2, that apparent disconnect that you can eat a food and tolerate it, but it comes up on a test as you should be allergic to it. First thing that pops in my head is compensation. There might be some type of compensatory measure that your body's doing so that you can eat it, but it might also be fueling and driving the underlying issue that's the problem in the first place. A lot of times what I find with clients that affect their acceptance or rejections of certain foods stem around or circle around compensations that the body builds up over time, because our body's number one goal is to keep us safe and stay alive. And it will do whatever it can, like in a heartbeat, to try to keep that going. So one, I can sit and talk about that topic like all day long, but in a nutshell, those would be like the big 2 heavy hitters that I would probably say about that.
Okay. Well, coming back to the big picture thing, we were talking about the medical system. The way I think your answer, to reframe it a little bit, if that's all right, is I don't know if you've read Dr. Peter Attia's book, Longevity. I don't know if you're a fan of his, but he talks about in that book the concept of medicine 2.0. So we're trying to keep you alive. We're trying to what's going on. Okay, this is not concerning. Like, sure, eat better, go exercise more. But that's medicine 2.0. Medicine 3.0 is a little bit more of what we're talking about here. A lot more of what you're practicing. You use that term holistic. I love diving into these terms, and I've struggled with that myself as like am I a fitness forward physical therapist? Am I a holistic practitioner? Because I talk about food and things like that, blood work, things like that. And actually here in Colorado, I can actually order pretty unlimited amount of blood work, which is fun and interesting. Speaking of the blood work for a second, I'm curious. So again, I've heard functional medicine is again a term that is not regulated at all for any of the consumers out there. So if you find a functional medicine practitioner, and hopefully they're not just using the term doctor out of nowhere, and you can actually check their credentials. I found a lot of chiropractors use that term. When I was in Southern California, I'd say I was, because when I was in New York City, I found some really high quality functional medicine practitioners that I could say, I can refer people here to do some high level testing and things like that. And I trust that they're going to get the right testing in front of this patient that I want to see improve. When I went to California, I was looking for similar practitioners. And unfortunately, I found practitioners with that term functional medicine that pretty much just sold mitochondrial supplements, and not to oversimplify the whole thing, but I was trying to have conversations. I was trying to look at their work, and it just felt a little more salesy. And so my question coming back, not to be skeptical of you, but just the concept of like, what does the testing look like? Because that's, I think, the piece where if anyone's worked with a functional medicine practitioner, hopefully you're having like a 3-hour conversation, this very long intake. We're trying to dive into all these clues, get into the depths of it. How quickly do you get into testing? Are we talking about $2,000 worth of testing? Are we talking about $5,000 worth of testing? And the testing is usually not for the practitioner. Maybe there's some back-end relationship that we're not even going to talk about, but that's where I want the consumer and somebody listening to this who says, I do have some food allergies. Maybe I should find, and hopefully they reach out to you to talk about some of these things. If they do have some food allergies, that's the idea with the show here. But long question ending is what kind of testing does your practice look like, and what should people be expecting to be realistic for going to a functional medicine? It's like, hey, if there's more than $2,000 testing, that's probably not what you need. I spoke to another person who's more of on the fitness side, but he does a lot in this space as well. To finish a little last tangent and he basically said, if the testing is not going to change anything you're going to do, and the consumer won't necessarily know that, but why are you doing like these 57 tests if it's still going to be like, well, cool, let's cut out protein, or let's try the carnivore diet, or whatever the thing is. So sorry for that long circuitous question, but you've known me for a long time, so you know this how I talk. And so the question becomes,
he hasn't changed a bit. He hasn't changed a bit.
Try to be authentic. I hope I've changed somewhat. I don't know, but anyway, some part of me. Anyway, so the question somewhere in there is, what do you think of testing? How does your testing look like? And what should consumers be on the lookout for when it comes to starting that journey of medicine 3.0, higher level testing, trying to get to the root cause of their issues?
Okay. You literally just asked me like 12 questions, but it's fine. I got you.
There's one, there's two in there. There's two.
2.75. So what should clients look for, or potential patients? Make it make sense to you. That's thing number one that I always tell my clients for testing. If the testing makes sense, if your practitioner can help you to understand why they're ordering the test or what the importance of the test is, that would be the biggest mainstay. Me personally, a lot of my work focuses on really diving deep into like anatomy, physiology, and understanding how the body works, because in understanding how the body works, you also understand how it communicates when there's a problem. So personally, I don't use a lot of testing. I do really focus on matching up symptoms, reports, noticing patterns in the client, and matching that with what I know of how the body is supposed to work. And a lot of times that ends up sealing the deal for me and knowing what direction we need to go. Thirdly, when I do order testing, I can say like my number one rule for ordering tests is when we hit a significant like obstacle, when we hit a challenge within the treatment program and the framework, and we're not getting around it, then we'll look at testing. And the first testing that I usually go for is blood work. We have walk-in lab testing facilities in Arizona, which is a huge advantage that I know a lot of practitioners don't even have. So I don't even need to order it. I can tell my client, go to this location, tell them you want this, like I'll give them the list of things that I want done. And they'll get blood drawn, and the facility will run the lab test and give it back to them. So again, if we hit a snag, we're not getting over the hump and moving the client forward, that's usually when I go into testing. blood test is my first one. A Dutch or urine test is usually my second, but it's usually the blood test that kind of gives us, the last little thing that we need to know. One thing about testing is understanding context with the testing. I think that's a big thing that I have to talk to clients about. When you were talking about kind of like medical, like we were talking about medicine and doctors and things like that, I can say the biggest issue with testing that I run into is a lot of times in Western medicine, when a test result still falls in a normal range, they just kind of like, it's in a normal range. I usually look for those patterns, or I look for like where in the range that they sit. So I had a client who we suspected that her erythropoietin levels were low based on her symptoms. But I wanted to double check, and I went and I sent her for a blood test. And so she got the results back and she was like, yeah, but it's normal. And I said, okay, send it to me. And so she sends it to me, and the range, first of all, the range was huge. It was like just arbitrarily, the numbers were like 9 to 28. She was at a 10. So I'm just like, you are right. It is in range. However, given the context, you've already got these symptoms and you're just shy of the low end. We're not going to wait until you drop down to 8 on an arbitrary blood test to do something about it. You're already trending in that direction. So that concept of testing and getting my clients to understand that, yes, testing can be good, but like, look at the trend, match it up with your symptoms. Don't wait until a number just looks like something on paper to like take action. I think that's one of kind of like the common practices that you see in Western medicine that is kind of upsetting. I had like my dad personally, he gets monitored for markers for leukemia. And they were in a good range for, the time that he got his testing done. And they literally said that they're just going to monitor it. And then if it falls below range, then we'll talk about chemo and we'll talk about radiation. And so he calls me and he tells me like, what do you think about this? I said, they literally told you they're going to wait until you get cancer to do something about it. Mm-hmm. And I said, we're not going to do that. So we started putting measures in place, and now he's dropped down to 9-month follow-ups. Because his markers are now stable and they're moving in the up direction. So I know that was a little long-winded, but that's how I feel about testing. Like it can definitely be a useful tool, but it doesn't have to be, for me personally, it doesn't have to be a whole bunch. And I guess that's the other thing, kind of circling back to what we were saying, practitioners who want to use or recommend using a lot of testing, that's their perspective and that's their toolbox. That's what they use to make their clinical decisions. Who am I to judge? That's what they need. That's the information that they need. I just know in my expertise and how I work with clients, I don't need that much. So, clients can take that for, what it means in terms of when they're making the decision of who they want to work with.
Yeah, the two common examples to exactly to what you're talking about, I think vitamin D levels are, and we can save for a part 2 for all these more specific things, but I always see that the normal range is 30 to 100. If you're at 29, oh no, we got to put you on something. If you're at 31, you're within the normal range.
You're fine. Yeah,
you're fine. And that's the big difference of surviving and that medicine 2.0 versus optimal and thriving, right? That again, I've seen vitamin D optimal levels somewhere in that 60 to 70 range. And the same thing with cholesterol. And you mentioned cholesterol a little bit. I did want to dive in there because I have a particular interest in that. My father died of a heart attack at 41. I just turned 40. I had a baby, so I'd like to be alive for my baby, and so I went to do some of the testing to try to get more advanced testing for through the traditional medical system, to do a ApoB, which is easy enough, and then also a CT angiogram was what I ended up doing. But the insurance companies don't pay for that if you're under 40, even though my father died of a heart attack at 41. So they'd rather I wait and get closer to the point of death, basically, or Yeah. So point being, I just want to get your take really. And again, I know cholesterol is a huge concept, but if you can give us any of your input on, again, traditional cholesterol, HDL versus LDL, what most people know, versus triglycerides versus the ratio. And I think there continues to be confusion. And I'll just, again, share my piece of, I think genetically my HDL stays low. I think that there's been medication that's come out that's supposed to increase HDL that hasn't really seemed to improve any kind of cardiac outcomes in the long term. In my view of that, again, something very interesting to me overall. And then, they the cardiologists were like, hey, we're just going to put you on a statin to keep your cardiac risk low. Again, medicine 2.0, we want to keep you alive. You have a risk factor, so we want to keep your LDL as low as possible. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. Again, to your point, who am I to say that? But I just want to get your take on it, because when we're making these decisions, I think there's more to it than just a simple, this is standard medical practice right now. There's been plenty of things. There's, you look back at the 50s, there was doctors delivering babies, smoking cigarettes as they're doing it. We're going to look back, I think, on the way cholesterol is treated these days as that. So overall, again, I know it's a big question, and we can end off on this because I think you said you had a little bit of time limit as well. But yeah, let's get your thoughts in as brief as you want or as long as you want on cholesterol.
Yeah, so I'm glad we're kind of like wrapping it up on this, because this is a great example of how Food Clues works and how I kind of like work with my clients. So let me see if I can like get it all right to explain it. Basically, you know what? I'm gonna, if it's okay to answer the question, I'm gonna put it in a very common example that I find in terms of cholesterol. Has to do with perimenopausal or around menopausal age women who are having like their, symptoms, and they come to me with blood work with various cholesterol levels, high triglycerides, high HDL. Sometimes the LDL can be high. They have these questions about cholesterol. So here are the heavy hitters of where cholesterol comes in for me. One, cholesterol is needed by your adrenal glands to make your hormones, to make, in this context, progesterone, testosterone, estrogen. Cholesterol is needed by your adrenal glands to do that. Cholesterol needs to get to your adrenal glands before your adrenal glands can even start using it. It gets there through your arterial system. It gets there by blood. It starts out from the liver. In a, like I said, super long story short, the food that we eat, your liver is supposed to break down, reconfigure, reprocess your cholesterols for them to be used appropriately. And again, we're using one example of getting them to your adrenal glands so that they can be used to make your hormones. So if there's an issue with your liver in terms of breaking down and reconfiguring that cholesterol, that can be one issue, that those blood tests can come out like that. It can be that if you're unable to break down like your triglycerides, if your liver is unable to break down your triglycerides, it gets recirculated in the blood in some way, shape, or form. So then when they go and draw the blood, you've got a high triglyceride level. It can also be you're able to get your HDL nice and prepared into your bloodstream, but for whatever reason, it's not getting picked up by your adrenal glands. Again, that's going to cause, when you do a blood draw, you're going to have high HDL in your blood. It's sitting around waiting to be picked up or waiting to be used by your adrenal glands. And there's something that's causing it to not do that. So when somebody comes to me with those types of levels, the first thing that I'm looking for are other clues in their body that might point me into why those levels are high. Not just that they're high and let's slap a medicine on it to get them low. That can be robbing you of a resource that your body needs, and then we're cascading into other problems. Where does Food Clues come in? If I have to stay away from fried foods because I know it tears me up. Not that I'm the biggest proponent of fried foods anyway, because they're not the healthiest, but you know that fried foods mess up your stomach. Or let's go with healthy fats. I have an avocado rejection. I have an avocado allergy. Avocados, nuts, they really mess up my stomach. Things that are more natural that we're supposed to be able to tolerate, we can't tolerate that. Yeah. Things that are high in saturated fats that are, or healthy fats that our bodies can't tolerate. Again, my body or my mind is thinking, why can I not tolerate it? Why is my body saying, don't give me any more of this, I can't handle it for some reason? Yeah. If it's saying don't give me this, I can't handle it for some reason, I'm thinking where in the body are some of the big heavy hitter areas that the body is supposed to be able to handle that stuff and it can't. I immediately think of your liver first. So then I start looking for other clues that might have liver issues. Are you tender around your liver area? Do you also not tolerate other foods that are linked to high liver function? Eggs, cilantro. You know how people either love or hate cilantro? People who hate cilantro, a lot of times that's linked to liver dysfunction. So that's the essence of like where food clues comes in. I can ask you other questions like, do you like this food? Do you like that food? Are you on vitamin D right now? Yeah, vitamin D is supposed to be broken down and used in the liver. And if it can't, or if you feel like, you have low vitamin D in the blood, that can be another clue to liver. So circling back to the cholesterol question that you asked, one, it's something that I work with a lot of clients. The number one thing is, why are those levels that way? And understanding what cholesterol is supposed to be doing, where it's supposed to be coming from, where it's supposed to be going. I can start picking apart and getting clues as to where your body or where the breakdown is in your body that's causing that. But it isn't just happening for no reason. That 3.0 mentality is breaking down and working with somebody who can figure out those reasons and like put you on the path to healing.
Perfect. Right on time. So don't forget, guys, I have the link on Amazon to go get Dr. Alexis's book, Food Clues, in decoding the hidden messages behind your food likes and dislikes. Again, beautiful book, very easy to use. And then at the end, she goes into what do you got to do now? What are your next steps? That's the great part. And again, especially if you know someone who is dealing with food intolerance, or they know that like you shouldn't just accept it, right? My kid has a peanut allergy. That's just the way it is. There are things we can do about that. So, and again, unfortunately, even if you've been told, there's nothing we can really do. We can do allergy testing. We can do elimination. You can avoid that food. You can do gluten-free bread, whatever that is. I think it's important to understand things like this, where you can actually, again, heal your body, heal your gut. We're talking about medicine 3.0, functional medicine. I don't want to step all over your message. Hopefully that was a tolerable summation of everything. But tell folks where they can find you.
You can find me website, myfoodclues.com. All my social media is just Dr. Alexis Sams. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. The YouTube channel is under Dr. Alexis Sams as well. You can pretty much just find me anywhere by typing in my name.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Alexis Sams. And that's Dr. Alexis Sams, similar to mine on the socials. All right, guys. Thank you, Alexis. I hope we'll do a part 2. We can get a little more into some of these details. And again, we're going to solve my cholesterol soon. We'll do it soon. And are you doing another? You said you're doing another book. Was that happening? Another book, second book?
Yeah. So second to Food Clues is Body Clues, where I'm going to be outlining about 50 common like body symptoms, and the same thing, breaking down what it means, what can be driving it, and what you can do about it. So keep an eye out for that. Where it's tentatively end of this year is when it should be coming out.
And having worked with her on school projects from 2005 to 2008, when she says dates like that, that's going to happen. People, be aware. So thank you, Alexis. We'll sign off here. And